What's up, everybody? It's Theo Call from PunchDrunkSports.com, bringing you a new segment called the Premier League Recap, where I'll be giving you a summary of the biggest results and the biggest games of this past weekend, or in this case, this past midweek match day. There's been quite a few big games this past Tuesday and Wednesday, for the simple fact that we're coming into the end of the season, we're in the run-in, and all teams played, and there were, in particular, a couple of derbies, and some very big chances for certain teams to take an advantage over the main rivals that ended up being an upset. I'm going to start off with talking about Leicester, who went up against West Brom at the King's Power Stadium in Leicester City. Going into this game, Leicester, in my opinion, should have gone in there, got the win pretty comfortably, and not had too much problems. But after having seen the game and going into analyzing how it played out, it was somewhat predictable that it would be a tough game, because when you look at Tony Pulis as a manager, all his teams always play very defensively. They always play very rigid in the sense that they play strong defense and they don't take a lot of risk moving forward, so they're never out of, I guess you could say they're almost never out of position. So it's really hard to break them down, and since they don't do anything creative and they never really leave any space at the back open, it does mean that you have to be. It takes something pretty special to get past their defense and get goals against them, and especially when they somehow manage to get 2 goals themselves, which is very shocking for a team that pretty much only plays the long ball. It does mean that maybe it's just not your night, and maybe they're just having the game of their season, basically, and that's exactly what happened. Leicester, even though they did press hard and they did create some decent chances, especially in the first half, there was just something about West Brom there was a certain solidity to them, and even, sure, they blew it at one point, but they still managed to get a draw in honestly getting a shocking result. I figured it would be 2-3-0 to Leicester, but Tony Pulis did show that he is, as always, a really good defensive manager, and he managed to get the result and put in one of the best performances of their season, without a doubt. Second game I'm going to talk about is Arsenal versus Swansea. This is one of those games that Arsenal really do need to win, and this is just further sort of justifies me calling them false contenders. Every single year they do the same thing. They get towards the 25th, 26th game, and that's when you start to see the meltdown begins. This year it came a bit later. It's now the 28th. That was the 28th game, and in the past 2 maybe they've started to really show signs of weakness. They were looking pretty good after having beaten Leicester. They looked like they were maybe going to get on a run and push forward and end up winning the league. But they've now lost 2 games in a row. They lost to Man United and Swansea. Of course, losing to Man United at Old Trafford is a bit more acceptable, even though sure United did have a lot of young players on. Those young players gave the injection of hunger and motivation that the team needed. That's fine. You can sort of take that, even though it's a bad loss for Arsenal, considering the situation and considering that Leicester didn't drop points. Losing to Swansea, who is a team battling relegation, and essentially giving them relevancy and giving them a shot to push forward after having beaten a team that they really shouldn't beat. This is a chance for Swansea to move forward and maybe get out of the relegation zone. Whereas Arsenal, going into their game this weekend against Tottenham, they're essentially fighting for 2 things. Number 1, to somehow stay close to the top 2, Tottenham and Leicester. And secondly, if they do, more than likely, this is just going to be a game for them that they can prevent Tottenham from winning the league. Because at this point, Tottenham are my favorites to win the league, simply because, albeit losing to having lost to West Ham, I do think they're the most solid team. Against West Ham, they did put in a good performance, and I'll talk about that later. But I think they're the most solid team. Whereas Leicester, their calendar is about to get tougher, so I think they will drop some points. I don't know how many points, but I do think they will drop some. But Arsenal needed to get this win against Swansea, and most importantly, they need Giroud, the striker, to start getting goals. This is what they've been lacking season after season after season. A striker who can get them 20+ goals. that just the same thing happened. Just like with last year with Giroud, just like this time, he's gone in like 11 and a half hours without getting a goal. I mean, that's ridiculous when he's your main striker, and when your second striker, your sub is Theo Walcott, who's pretty much worse. It's incredible that Arsene Wenger can continue to build this team around these same players, never adding the real missing pieces that they have. They needed a big striker, they didn't get it. They needed maybe one good winger, they didn't sign him. They definitely needed a strong center defensive midfielder, they didn't sign him. I mean, how is Mathieu Flamini a starter still? I just don't get it. So, Arsenal went out there, they started the game strong, they got to go early, but from there it just went badly. You could see they were maybe a little bit overconfident, or maybe the pressure got to them, or maybe it's just the pressure in general is getting to them too much, and having lost to Barcelona and seeing everything start to crumble, maybe that's what's happening to them. But really, I mean, Swansea, who are a team who aren't that great. Sure, they have players like Sigurdsson, they have Gomis, they are a pretty decent team, but all season long we've seen them struggle. So they have no business beating Arsenal, and this is just another time where Arsenal choked. And at this point, their title dreams are very, very, very close to being over. And honestly, I don't see them getting anything out of the game against Tottenham. If they do get a draw, then maybe there's hope. If they do get a win, obviously there is hope. But honestly, I do not see them getting the win. I see them losing, and I essentially see them, seeing for about the third, fourth season straight, seeing their dreams go down. I mean, usually Arsenal do this, but this was the year, because you see that Man City, Chelsea, United, all the three teams that typically cause them problems and typically are just that little bit better than them. All three of those teams are below them and are doing poorly. So there's really no reason that Arsenal shouldn't be winning the title. It's embarrassing, and I do feel bad for the fans, but I do not feel bad for Wenger, who continuously does this to himself. He continuously refuses to improve the team, and he continuously tries to build these little French teams with young French talent, bringing in one or two really good players, but overall he does the same thing over and over again, and it's going to bite him in the ass once again. The next game I'm going to talk about is Liverpool versus Manchester City. This is a game that was essentially a rematch of the Capital One Cup final that was played Sunday, which City won on penalties. And what a response by Liverpool, winning 3-0, dominating the game. City were completely absent from it. They didn't do much of anything at all. From top to bottom, Liverpool, there wasn't a position that City had a better performance in. And, this is a really, really big loss for City, because, I mean, winning the Capital One Cup is cool and all, but at the end of the day, the Premier League is way more important. I mean, the Capital One Cup is one of those cups where generally teams like City, they play their young players to get them experience, whereas the Premier League, the Premier League, FA Cup, and the Champions League, those are the three cups you need to be winning. Sure, City have a chance of winning all three, at least two of them, because their Premier League hopes, after losing this badly to Liverpool, are pretty much shattered. They do have a chance of winning at least the Champions League, and the FA Cup, but realistically, the Champions League, they don't have the team to do it. After seeing how they play in the Premier League, they don't have the teamwork, they don't have the solid, they have the individual players maybe. That's debatable. But as a team, they just don't have what it takes to win a cup like the Champions League. And I mean, going into this game, they really did need to win this. They needed to win this to be able to keep close to Arsenal, but most importantly, keep within distance of Leicester and Tottenham, who do not look like they're going to be stopping anytime soon, even though they did drop points. And that's exactly why teams like Arsenal and City needed to take advantage of Leicester and Tottenham both dropping points. This was their chance to get closer, and what they do, they both blew it. It's those are the two teams that really should be at the top, and they're blowing it and choking. City, realistically, Manuel Pellegrini, I don't know if he's doing this maybe on purpose, as in to say screw you for getting rid of me announcing that Guardiola would be the next manager when I'm here. I mean, we were still fighting for four leagues. I don't know if that's what he's doing or what, but I mean, if he isn't, then what the hell are you doing? Because with those kind of players, you really should not be in fourth. You definitely should be destroying the opposition in the league, considering how bad Chelsea and United are. He really should be out of sight. It's just ridiculous. But at this point, it's hard to see City even coming close to winning the league. Maybe they can get third or second, but at this point, you have to look behind them. You have United and you have West Ham, who both got wins and have really gotten themselves close. United are on even points, albeit City do have a game in hand, but United are even. West Ham are 1 point behind them. And really, if City continue to play like this, then there's no guarantees that they're going to be in the Champions League next year. There's no guarantees that they're going to be, getting that top 4 spot because sure the top, from third to essentially sixth are pretty close. Arsenal are only 4 points ahead of City and United, but that's not far. And any of those 4 teams essentially could be finishing in that third spot, and maybe obviously the fourth spot is even more up for grabs. So it's really looking bad for City, and I don't see them winning anything important this year. Like I said, the Champions League and the FA Cup are sort of out of their reach. Maybe the FA Cup, but the Champions League for sure out of their reach, and so is the Premier League. So this season can't be considered anything other than a failure for a team like City, and it's going to take a lot for Guardiola to sort of make a team like that his own. Obviously, he's going to have to bring in a lot of new players, but overall, I think this season for City is essentially over, and it's going to be pretty much a major failure. The last game I'm going to talk about is Manchester United versus Watford. This was a big game for United coming in with a 3-game win streak, and they really needed to continue this. Having a few players like Darmian back, you really needed or Marcelo back as well, sorry. And this is a team that is sort of starting to refine its main starters. What did that do? I'm not really sure how long a team with a lot of youngsters like they had been playing the last couple of games, how long a team like that could go on. And I think that this is sort of the right mix of youth and experience at this point. And however, their performance last night was really poor. Especially in the first half, there was essentially nothing. It was all Watford. Realistically, the first 50 to 60 minutes were all Watford. United did just about nothing. Watford had a lot more chances to score. They probably should have gone 1, if not 2 goals up. And United were really lucky to get the goal in. It was a great free kick from Mata, perfectly placed on the top left corner. Nothing the keeper could do. And from then on, United had, they controlled the game. Even before that, they had some chances. Like I said, from 60 minutes on, United came into the game. It was kind of strange, watching. It was kind of like maybe Van Gaal had planned it like that, to where they were going to sort of, take it easy for the first 60 minutes and then turn it on in the later half, because all of a sudden things started clicking more and United started creating chances. I don't know if it was maybe just a pride thing or a tactical thing. It seems kind of strange to be tactical considering how fragile Van Gaal's job is right now. So I'm gonna say it's probably more than anything it's a pride thing from the players, and they saw that there was a chance of, obviously Watford is one of those teams that you have to beat if you want to qualify for the Champions League. And realistically, United did take a pretty big step moving forward since City and Arsenal both lost. And who knows, the top 4 is a possibility at this point, maybe even top 3. So you never know. It's not going to be easy, obviously, but there is a chance. And if they can push on, considering how weak and how fragile Arsenal and City are, there is a chance. But you have to be careful because West Ham are pretty much the same, as good as United, if not better. You just see, there's a pretty big difference between beating Tottenham and beating Watford. And realistically, West Ham at home, they haven't lost since I think it's August or September, so they're really solid. So it's not going to be easy to keep them at bay, but there is a chance. United have sort of progressed a bit over the past few weeks. And it is kind of nice seeing Van Gaal. He's sort of been changing things. In a recent video I made, I called for big changes by United, and especially from Van Gaal. I said, if he is going to stay, he has to change himself. He has to do something different. He can't be sitting on the bench the whole time, just looking at his notebook, scribbling things down. He has to be on the sidelines, trying to pump up his team, trying to pump up the players and get them to push on and maybe get some wins in hard times like they did yesterday. Against Arsenal, he had that hilarious thing where he faked a dive on the sideline with the 4th official, and I think that's what we needed to see more. This time, I didn't see him often on the sidelines, but it is sort of going back to the old Van Gaal. Van Gaal, when he was younger, he reminded me a bit of Klopp. He was always on the sideline. He was a very energetic type of person. He was fly kicking. He had some crazy celebrations, even at the World Cup. He high fived Van Persie. He was one of the men of the team. A man amongst players, and it was nice to see that. And it was definitely nice to see him do that against Arsenal in a game that was obviously huge for the team. May have been a huge turning point. I mean, you see players like Rashford, like Depay, like Martial, these young players that are really kicking up a notch. And whether United do get Champions League this year, which I'm not too sure. I mean, there is a chance of winning the Europa League, and at this point, there is a good chance at the top. Well, not a good chance, but there is a chance at the top four. So who knows? But even if they don't make it to the Champions League, I think that with the young players that the team have, like Varela, Riley, players I already mentioned, there's a very strong base in that team, and for years to come, this United team could be very dangerous if they can keep the same players and maybe even bring in some experienced players who can add to it. And most importantly, we just need to get back to playing the United way. Lately, we have been, even though against Watford we maybe didn't, we had a poor performance, but in the second half, you could definitely tell there was more offense, and it was more of a typical United performance in the sense that they went from suffering to getting the win. That was very vintage United, and I was glad to see it. And overall, I think the Premier League, really, this has been the best Premier League season I've ever seen. It's not over yet. There's still, I think, 9 games left, 10 to 9 games left, and it's going to be really, really good to see who can come out on top. All of it's still open. I mean, really, even City, they may, they could get themselves back in it. It's not going to be easy, but who knows? This has been the most crazy, unpredictable league I've ever seen. And I think there's a lot more in store for us, and it's going to be a real treat to see how this pans out. And I look forward to seeing the games this weekend, especially because, Arsenal-Tottenham is going to be a really fun game. And, it's going to be fun. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, follow me on Instagram and Twitter. The Twitter is, you'll find it in the description below. And so check out punchdrunksports.com and listen to the podcast. And thanks for watching.